I mean, the figure that you just mentioned across Africa, in Southern Africa, it said, and I want to read this real quick, that only 3 of Southern African countries have over 30% of women in economic decision making. And I mean, talking about in political leadership or decision making, it was too dismal. I didn't even want to take the figure because we are essentially not active in political leadership. And there are various reasons why this is so. And it has been, the various studies that have been put forward as to why this is so. Excuse me, I have yeah. So I think there are several opportunities for us to work on representation in economic spaces and political and whatever else space that exists. And, you know, there are various protocols that are out there that are encouraging for laws to protect women and children's rights first and foremost. Because if your rights are not protected, if you can't drive, if you can't work, if you can't own land, those are some of the bases that if, they're not in place, then it's very difficult for you to become a very active participant in the economy. And then there are a couple of structural and legal obstacles that already exist that need to be dealt with. I mean, I remember last year at some point, I think South Africa changed a law that prohibited land ownership by women or something like that without the husband's approvals. And we know that that was the same here in Botswana at some time. Similarly, with financial applications and inheritance law, the famous Ganye case that women can't inherit. And these things are not just in Botswana, South Africa, they're so widespread across the continent that if we don't look at them in the beginning, first and foremost, protection of women and children's rights, then it will essentially just never happen to see an increase of women in decision making. And of course, there are those like affirmative action. Margaret Nasha has talked quite broadly about this before, the need for affirmative action to ensure that Parliament at least has a quota of women, and then also in the civil service and so forth. And then in companies, the issues around providing maternity leave, if maternity and paternity leave are not standard as they are not in the US. Then, it makes it very difficult for women to want to get more hours in businesses and companies and aspire for partnership or whatever the highest level C-suite levels are, because they are just challenged if they want to have families, because not everyone wants to have families. And then we have to look at those women economic empowerment policies and reduce the barriers around economic opportunity. And these tie in quite closely with what I was saying a little earlier on gender, women's rights, women and children's rights. And, there are several things that I can talk to, but it's essentially just making sure that you're aware of these gender biases that have existed for centuries, and stereotypes that are there. And when you're aware of those gender biases, they could be unconscious biases, then you can start to actively be aware of the decisions that you make, and if they are inclusive in gender and other vulnerable groups.